going to reach into the neighborhoods. We're going to reach into the barrio. We're going to reach everywhere.
The story's out there.
Islam, one of the fastest growing religions in America, 1,209 mosques.
No 30-second sound bites.
Like all other faith traditions, America means home to 7 million Muslims.
Michigan, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Uncut, the whole thing.
Detroit,
Iowa,
Virginia,
Montana, San Francisco, Tennessee, New York City, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Boston.
Experience the independent voices of American Muslims. Muslims America. Having traveled around the world, people have always asked me if there are any Muslims in America. And if there are, then are they like any other Muslim? What kind of clothes do they wear? How do they pray? What brand of Islam do they practice? What do they do for a living? To some, this line of questioning would seem strange. Nevertheless, there is a misperception in the outside world about America, and the perception is vice versa. And now, when I'm here in America, I'm going to try and find answers to these complex questions. So I head out to a location hidden deep in the woods of Philadelphia. In Chester County, Pennsylvania, some 40 miles west of Philadelphia, lays a shrine of probably one of the first Sufi saints in America, Baba Muhyiddin.
It was like being in a fog where everything's out of focus, and suddenly you see one thing that's clear and in focus. And that's what Bao was like. If he was sitting in the trees and the bushes, everything was slightly hazy, and he was perfectly in focus. And the resonance in Bao, which he said if you take a violin and you strike one of the strings and you hold it next to another violin, that same string in the other violin will start vibrating. And being with Bao was just like that.
M.R. Baba Muhyiddin came to America in 1971. And in just 15 short years, brought a subtle tranquility to this region.
These men who came didn't speak the language, had no money, had nothing, and then the whole community was built in 15 years from that.
He passed away in 1986 and is buried here in this calm and serene environment that he and his followers built over the years. But the impact that his legacy has left still resonates in the hearts and minds of thousands of people across the United States.
There was a great saint that came to America who demonstrated that a human being is capable of loving all lives as his own life. And that generosity of heart, I think, is the why of our institutions.
Just like all other immigrants in America have come from some other part of the world, Baba Muhyiddin came from the mountains of Sri Lanka.
He brought Islam to us, came from Sri Lanka, and taught us everything, starting with the zikr, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. That was the first thing he taught us. Went right into the qualities of God and gradually introduced all of the practices, the salat and everything.
People say that before coming to the U.S., he was meditating in the legendary Adams Mountains. He taught the local residents everything he knew about Islam, and according to his followers, here we're talking about the true tenets of Islam.
The only story is his story. So if you're looking for history, look to his story, God's story, Allah's story. That story is the only story that's worth talking about, the only story that's worth hearing, the only story that's worth examining. Everybody else's history is just a tiny little blip and doesn't mean anything. But the story of Allah, as emulated, as demonstrated, as shared by all the prophets, that message that the prophets brought is the only message that mankind needs as a guidance for them in their life.
It feels like it's a sanctuary, even at the mazar, at the shrine, and even here. Do you think Islam in America, or if we just talk about this community, Philadelphia, if you talk about just Philadelphia, do you think Philadelphia would have been the same had Baba Muhyiddin had not come to this place?
Well, he certainly, it wouldn't have been the same for me. I can only tell you from my own personal experience that the single most influential person in my life was Baba Muhyiddin. I'm 60 years old. I was born and raised a Catholic and thoroughly enjoyed that experience, having met Baba and having understood that this is a Muslim and this is the way Islam is supposed to be. And this is the only association I had with Islam, was this incredibly kind, gentle, sweethearted, but absolutely clear person who seemed to understand what it is that people had within their own heart, and also understood what it was that they needed to get rid of within themselves, that those things that were separating them from Allah. Those kinds of experiences lots of people had with Baba, and because of those experiences a lot of people came to Islam. So for me, having met a Muslim and perhaps having those kinds of experiences changed every part of my life from that point on.
But what is the actual message of this American Sufi saint, Baba Muhyiddin?
I think it takes a really true saint, a really great saint like Baba, to introduce Islam to a country where everybody already believes in one God, and they're either Christians or Jews and some Muslims. And without somebody who can actually manifest it himself, I think it would be very difficult.
Some might also ask, whom are these Muslims praying to?
I took the Shahada with Baba in 1972, or 1973. When I took the Shahada, he said, and made me repeat after him, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and explained every part. And he said, what you're saying is that there is no God but God, and that Muhammad is the messenger of God, and that following those teachings of the Prophet will get rid of the things that separate you from God. So there was never, ever a question of him being in the middle of any of that. Those explanations that Allah placed within him were for our benefit.
Allah Akbar.
Islam has to be an invitation. Islam is an invitation to all of humanity.
Allah Akbar.
The only convincing that's going to come is if he looks at me and says, boy, something happened with him.
One of the most interesting aspects of the Muslim community in the US is how they blend in or integrate into mainstream USA. When we look at the Muslims of South Asia or the Middle East, and then we look at the Muslims in America, there, again, critics have been saying there's a vast difference. What can we attribute that difference to?
This is America. This is America. I mean, in America, you know, when I go home, when my family has a dinner, two of my brothers are Catholic. One of my sisters is a Protestant. Another one is Jewish, converted to Judaism. We're Muslim. We sit down at the same table and we eat, and we talk, we communicate, we interact. I stay with them, they stay with us. Everyone has that kind of cohesive kind of mixture here, and it's not just in my family. It's part of this culture. that we're used to rubbing elbows with one another. We're used to dialoguing. We're used to discussing, and we're not frightened to sit down and talk to someone. And when I talk, I have a very close friend of mine who's a priest. And when we discuss issues, I don't try to convince him that he's got to leave his religion. The only convincing that's going to come is if he looks at me and says, boy, something happened with him. Something's going on with his life. And I better investigate it a little bit more carefully. It's never going to be words. It's never going to be words. It's always going to be the actions that people do, that people have. And those actions have to spring from a state. You can't fake it. Either you're in that state or you're not. Either you're going to act in ways that's going to attract attention and is going to draw people to Islam because you become something different. And becoming something different means that you're changed. And when you're changed, that change is going to attract people just like honey, because that change better be a change into an open-hearted, loving, kind of respectful and inviting place. That's what Islam is. Islam has to be an invitation. Islam is an invitation to all of humanity. And absent that invitation, if Islam is presented in the world as an angry religion, a divisive religion, a religion that separates, a religion that's intolerant, all of those things will scare people.
We have Christians in this country, we have Jews in this country, we have Muslims in this country, and there's so much diversity in America, and yet we see Muslims thriving and coexisting with all these cultures and religions. Why do you think that is happening?
Well, Islam is the fastest growing religion in America, even today with all of the troubles in the world. And I think it's because really all of the religions are the same origin. There's one God, the prophets all came in an order, they all brought the same message. And here there's a little more openness for people to realize that the message is the same. Even though the Jews are focused on Moses and have their own traditions and the Christians are focused on Jesus, the core truth is the same behind it. And you can feel the resonance of that truth through Islam and with other people. And people step back here and they sort of feel that resonance of oneness.
And what about the attire? I mean, you're a Muslim, and you're dressed up in a shirt and a jacket. You don't have a long beard. You're a pretty cool-looking guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean...
Well, that's very kind of you. A 60-year-old guy looking cool is very...
Well, you're most welcome.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that when we see CNN and Fox and other networks, we see a different image of Islam. And when I come to places like these, in America, I see Muslims like yourself. And I see a vast difference from where I come from. I'm from Pakistan, so I'm used to looking at different
cultures. Cultures. You know, in Holland they used to wear wooden shoes. The important thing is modesty has very little to do with, whether a person is wearing a Middle Eastern garb or if they're wearing a three-piece suit or whatever. Modesty has to do with how it is that you feel before Allah, how it is that you have the awareness that Allah is watching you, that Allah is always present in your life, and that there is never a moment that you are alone, and there's never a thing that you do that's hidden from Allah. So you have to guard yourself and your modesty and your conduct and your words and your thoughts and your behavior, because you want to do everything that's pleasing to Allah, and the only thing that's pleasing to Allah is the Asma Husna. And whenever we have qualities within us that are at odds with the Asma Husna, we're at fault.
Would it be okay to say that in America we see rock and roll Muslims? Or?
Well, that's probably not the best description.
Okay. Let's say progressive Muslim.
I'm dressed modestly and cleanly and
okay.
clean.
Would you call me a rock and roll Muslim?
You're probably closer dressed than I am.
But that would not change me as a Muslim. I would still believe in God, and I still respect all religions, right?
It's all about your qualities, your behavior, and whether you actually live consistently with Islam or just call yourself a Muslim on the surface and don't act that way. It's all in the kind of the follow-through. And it's not so much in what you look like or how you dress. A lot of the image of Muslims in America with the kufis and the whole Middle Eastern and Far Eastern thing just is the way they dressed in their cultures before they moved here. So that's just a cultural thing. Here, you know, this is my culture, I guess. But it's clean and it's modest, and the key is the qualities, the compassion, the Asmaul Husna, the 99 qualities of God, and whether you can put that into practice with every breath of the day. That's what counts.
So it's like, I mean, you'll be walking down a train station and no one would know that you're a Muslim.
Correct.
Would it be a problem if somebody knows that you're a Muslim?
No, I actually, my Arabic name is Abdul Jabbar. That's actually on my passport with my other name. The people I work with all know I'm a Muslim. So we don't hide it. It's who we are. You know, it's the way we live. And it's important, I think, to really feel comfortable with your relationship with God. And if you're comfortable with the relationship with God, what else counts?
American people are good people. American people are really very inviting.
This is an amazing country. Nobody tells me what to do. Nobody tells me what to say. And I feel absolutely free here.
But critics would argue that if Islam has a message of peace, then how come majority of the Muslims in the world can't agree with one another on so many issues? Talking to a Muslim blogger a couple of days back, he raised an important question. He was saying that Muslims most of the times can't agree on what time they want to pray, what mosque they want to go to, what time they want to celebrate Eid. If Muslims can't agree half the times on what they want to do for each other, how can they convince the rest of the world that Islam means peace?
Well, maybe. That might be true. But it seems that a lot of the world seems to be convinced that Islam means something to them because a lot of people in the world are converting to Islam. And I don't necessarily think that Muslims are going to attract people to Islam. Allah will attract people to Islam and turn hearts to Islam. Our responsibility is to make sure that we don't get in the way of that process by acting in ways that are completely inappropriate and offensive. And so how it is that we conduct ourselves is not only for our benefit, but also for the benefit of those who might happen to see us and identify us as Muslims. The fact that Muslims can't agree on anything isn't a big deal. A lot of people can't agree on anything. The fact that people stay in unity around the important issues of praying, remembering God, acting correctly, being compassionate towards one another, caring for people, all of those things, having justice, having correct thoughts, and having correct actions that come from those thoughts. All of those things are really the foundation upon which the unity that we have as Muslims flows.
Tell us, what is it that attracted you towards Islam?
With Islam, it's just you, God, the Quran, and the truth.
There's another perception about America and the American Muslims that relates to the concept that Muslims here are under attack and are suffering.
Yeah. Muslims are having a normal life. Muslims are having a very normal life. Muslims are tolerated extremely well. The media certainly presents a certain image, but part of that image is actually fed to the media from people who want to create that image. And those might be Muslims. They might be some people who decide that that they have some political agenda and there's some advantage for them to be able to create that impression in people. But American people are good people. American people are really very inviting. They're extremely tolerant. They're very forgiving. They're very loving. That's been my experience for the last 60 years. I've been living here. I was born here. I'm an American. I like Americans. I like them very much. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else in the world. This is the place I want to live because here
people have the freedom to choose what it is that they want, and there's a responsibility that goes with those choices. And that responsibility is what it is that we as Muslims have to take full weight of. We have to take full responsibility. In a place where you can access anything, you have to walk on a path that our Sheikh described as being like the edge of a sword that's honed 70,000 times. He said, that's the path that we're walking on. You can't lean too far to the world. You can't lean too far to fanaticism. You have to be balanced. You have to be completely balanced. And to maintain that balance, you need the support of the 5 pillars of Islam. You need the support of the hadith. You need the support of the guidance of the sheikhs and the wise ones who've learned things that we might not have learned and can guide us. So all of those things come into play, but this is a place where people are allowed to not only to discuss, but they're allowed to object. They're allowed to criticize, but all of that stuff is tolerated under the First Amendment. But freedom of religion is tolerated.
This is an amazing country. I came here as an immigrant. My parents escaped a war and came here. I came from a very poor family. When I graduated high school, I was given a scholarship to go to college. When I graduated college, I was given loans to go to law school. The opportunity was given to me to advance myself by the government. Nobody asked me who I was, where I came from. I applied and they gave these things to me. I've been given the opportunity to practice religion the way I want. Nobody tells me what to do, nobody tells me what to say, and I feel absolutely free here. I've traveled to Mecca 10 times. Nobody here has asked me why, what was I doing there, and what was the reason that I went. I would say to people that one of the great difficulties in this world is that we judge others without knowing them.